Good morning, everybody. I believe it's morning in Copenhagen when you're watching this. I am on the East Coast of the United States, so for me, I believe it's 4 o'clock in the morning, and I am sound asleep by the time you're watching this. And even though I seem happy about that, I'm actually sad to not be in Copenhagen this year, and I hope that next year this conference does happen in Copenhagen, and that I'm invited to attend because I would love to see that beautiful city. But I really want to thank the conference organizers for inviting me to be a speaker at this important event. And I've decided that what I'm going to talk about this morning are two things. Really, one, the patient perspective on biosimilars. And then more importantly, I'm going to talk about the data that we recently got published from the Alliance for Safe Biologic Medicines on European physicians' perspectives on biosimilar medicines. And this was a repeat survey. We had done it in 2013, and we did it again last year, and I'm going to review the results of that. So why don't we jump right in? Again, my name is Andrew Spiegel, and I have been in the patient advocacy arena now for over 20 years. I got involved in the late 90s because I lost both of my parents to cancer and learned when I lost my mom to colon cancer that there were no patient advocacy groups in the United States dedicated to colorectal cancer. And so I co-founded the first ever colon cancer patient advocacy group in the United States called the Colon Cancer Alliance. And since then, about 7 or 8 years ago, we formed a partnership with our European counterpart, and we formed the global division. And that is what I do now, is I run the global division, which is now a standalone organization called the Global Colon Cancer Association. And we are made up of the nearly 50 groups around the world who represent colon cancer. I remember when I started, there was one, now there's almost 50. And that sounds like a lot, but there needs to be a lot more, and we're working on that. So I've also had, since undertaking running the global organization, I've also had some leadership positions in global organizations. And so I've had some real familiarity with what's happening around the world in the biosimilars arena and colon cancer and other health spaces. I was on the board of directors of IAPO, the International Alliance of Patient Organizations, for 3 years. And currently I'm the chair of the World Patients Alliance, which is an organization of more than 100 patient groups from all around the world. But enough about me. Let's get into what I want to talk about, which is my role as co-founder and steering committee member of the Alliance for Safe Biologic Medicines. And that organization is an organization of patients, patient groups, physician groups, and industry who care about biosimilars and care about the uptake of biosimilars. And I'll go into that a little bit more. But for a minute, why should colon cancer organizations care about biologics? And the reason is very simple, because biologics have made a huge difference in the life of colon cancer patients worldwide. There's more than 1.2 million who are diagnosed with colon cancer each and every year. Of course, that will be different this year because no one is being diagnosed with colon cancer this year because no one is going for their tests. And that's a whole separate problem for another day. But we do advocate in a global way with our global community for over 6 million patients worldwide. And the global experience for me has really raised awareness of the importance of physician and patient-led decision-making, not government or payer-led decision-making. And in late 2010, and now 20 years ago, we co-founded the Alliance for Safe Biologic Medicines. And the reason we did that was to make sure that the patient perspective was brought to the table in discussing biologics and biosimilar regulatory policies. And we have been at the table for the past 10 years, everywhere from being invited several times a year to the WHO to present, to the pre-ICTRA meetings, to conferences like this. And we have been advocating all around the world for 10 years to make sure that biosimilar regulatory policies are patient-led. We know that over 1 billion patients, excuse that typo, I don't know what happened there, but over 1 billion people around the world have benefited from biologic medicines. And we know that these are unique medicines that are normally used to treat very serious, long-lasting conditions. And a lot of patients have taken years and sometimes decades to find the right medicines that work for them. And biologic medicines have made a tremendous difference in the lives of many patients of many diseases, but most know that already that are watching this presentation. We also know that in some patients, I think of a person that I'm often on panels with when we talk about biosimilars, who's got so many different comorbidities and lupus and all different types of diseases, and takes something like 35 different medicines every day just to have a meaningful life. And so what a person like that worries about is that a government or a payer coming in and changing their therapy, that could lead to an immune response for that patient, or could lead to a loss of response for that patient. And they may lose that that stability that they've had for many years. And so that's one of the things that we do worry about. And so in the colon cancer world, what have we seen since the introduction of biologic medicines? I've been in here long enough to remember when we only had one drug to treat colon cancer, and it was highly ineffective. And as a result, your average life expectancy of colon cancer patients was under a year. It was actually about 9 months when I got started in this. And we know now that access to newer treatments like biologics have given hope to our patients and time to our patients. And now, instead of just living months, our sickest patients, our metastatic stage 4 colon cancer patients, are now living years, some of them many years. And this is what it's all about. It's all about spending more time on this earth, and spending more time with family and friends, and living longer and better lives. So what are the promise of these biosimilars? Well, we know that they offer many benefits to patients, such as increased access to biologic therapies. There may be times when a physician wants a patient to take a newer biologic, a biosimilar, and there may be times when they don't. May want them to take a drug that's been around 20 or 30 years. These are lower cost, and that is true all around the world. We've seen that biosimilars are coming in at a reduction, and I'll go over that in a couple of seconds of how much that reduction has been. But we have certainly seen significant reductions, especially in the EU, where this conference is taking place, where biosimilars have been around since 2006. Canada's had them since 2009, the US since 2015. When here in the US, we have approved 28 biosimilars to date, 17 are already on the market. But many other countries are continuing to develop biosimilar policies. We want to make sure that these policies work for patients. And so what are our overall objectives as patients? We want to be the unbiased representatives of the patient community, advocating on critical issues important to patients, such as biologics and biosimilars. And we want increased access to biosimilars. We want health systems to pay less, because we know, especially in the region where this conference is taking place, that when you decrease overall healthcare spending, you increase the pool of drugs available, increase the pool of patients who can take those drugs. And I know that you've actually seen some of that data come out in Norway, where savings have turned into increased access. And so we want more biosimilars to come to market. But we want all standards for approval to be patient-centered. And we want informed patients and informed physicians in the event of a substitution of a biosimilar over an originator biologic. So what is our perspective on substitution? Well, when it comes to non-medical switching, which is the switching of a patient's medicine by a third party, really to save money, not because it's in the patient's best interest or in their health, in the best interest of their health. This is to save money to the health system or to the payer. And the issues surrounding that are very simple, that changing your treatment that's working for you may change the control that a patient or a physician has over their condition. And most people don't want to change their medicines if they're working for them. They don't want to take the risk, and they don't want to take the risk that they will develop some immunogenicities to the medicine that they're taking. And as a result, those physicians and patients generally don't want to change a stable patient to another drug. So payers are frequently encouraging a change from a biologic to a non-interchangeable biosimilar here in the US for the sole reason of reducing costs. And no patient protections exist to prevent the payers from forcing a patient to change a therapy. There could be higher out-of-pocket costs. There may not be, but there could be. We don't know yet. We have seen formulary design changes where an insurer here in the US will simply force you financially to take a different medicine than the one you're taking, because they will raise the price of the one you're taking so that it's not accessible to you. And so formulary design changes are a big issue. When these tiers changes, blocking the use of copay cards, all these things could be issues for patients as these biosimilar policies flesh out around the world. And one of the forced switchings that we're concerned about is happening right now in Canada. British Columbia and Alberta recently announced that they were going to forcibly switch about 50,000 patients who were stable taking their biologic medicine that was chosen by them and their physician because the government decided that they could take a biosimilar, a government. And so you could see here on this slide all the list of different diseases that are affected by this, and many patient organizations have been advocating fiercely against this because it is essentially has taken the physician out of the equation. It's government telling a patient which medicine they must take, despite the fact that a physician may want somebody else to take something. So we're concerned about what's happening in Canada, and it's very different than the European experience. We know that the European experience shows that it's not necessary to take away treatment decisions from physicians and patients in order to get high biosimilar uptake. We know that the discounts have been significant in the 30 to 50% range, and some have gone as high as 70. I recently heard an 80% discount on a biosimilar. But the European uptake rates have been accomplished, I would say, because of transparency and because of openness and because they have simply been educating physicians about biosimilars and educating patients and getting them to be comfortable and sharing data which has been used to approve of these biosimilars. And in European countries, physicians and patients are free to choose among multiple medicines, all of which are reimbursed by the payers. New patients may be encouraged to try a less costly biosimilar, but stable patients are not forced in Europe to switch to a biosimilar. Now, you know that Norway and Denmark are the outliers to that, very different societies than many other places in the world, but we know that they reimburse only the winning product, but they do that following a transparent national tender process, not a government mandated decision, as in the case of British Columbia and Alberta. So we really hope that Canada can follow the lessons from Europe and reverse the plan of what they do and follow what has been successful in Europe to increase biosimilar uptake. So what can we patients expect? Well, we have the right to expect that the life of the patient remains the primary guiding principle of all biosimilar policy discussions, not cost savings. And we want access to biosimilars, and we want assurances that they are being held to the same standards of safety, purity, efficacy as the reference product. And of course, we want our physicians to stay in charge of our healthcare. We don't want government bureaucrats deciding which medicine is best for us. We want our physicians to make that decision. So what do the physicians think? Well, as I said, the Alliance for Safe Biologic Medicines back in 2013 conducted a survey of European physicians, and that survey was repeated in 2019. The survey was, as I said, a refresh, and respondents were asked to describe biologics, that respondents had to prescribe biologics, and they had to practice in one of the major countries in Europe, France, Germany, Italy, Spain, Switzerland, or the UK. And they were drawn from 10 different practice areas, generally which prescribe biologic medicines, and there were almost 600 responses received, distributed equally among the 6 surveys. And by the way, this survey, the entire survey is available. I will give my email address at the last slide. But what we have seen since that survey in 2013 is a big change in physicians' understanding, knowledge, and familiarity, and comfort in prescribing biosimilars. So one of the questions asked, how important is it to you to have sole authority to decide together with your patient what the most suitable biologic medicine is for their disease? A strong majority of respondents, 82%, felt that it was either very important or critical for them to decide which biologic medicine was dispensed to their patient, which was a 10% increase from our 2013 survey, and you can see the data right there. Another question was asked, in which situation where substitution by a pharmacist was an option in your country, how important is it for you to have authority to designate a biologic medicine as dispense as written or do not substitute? In other words, for a physician to override the pharmacist or to ensure that the patient is going to get exactly what the doctor wanted them and not have that medicine substituted by a pharmacist. A strong majority of respondents, 10% more than in 2013, agreed, and they considered that the authority to prevent a substitution was either very important or critically important. So 84% of physicians want to maintain control over their patients in Europe. So what about switching to a biosimilar or being prescribed a biosimilar in a naive patient, meaning a patient that has never been on a biologic or that biologic before, versus a stable patient, somebody that is on a biologic that's working for them? So the question, how comfortable you are in prescribing a biosimilar to a treatment naive patient, and how comfortable are you prescribing a stable patient from that originator biologic to a biosimilar? Another strong majority, 84%, were comfortable prescribing a biosimilar to a treatment naive patient. And that level decreased to only 60% when asked about switching a stable patient to biosimilars. And so we see that that also is a significant change from the 2013 survey. And we see that, again, physicians want to maintain control over their patients, and they want to be in charge of prescribing a biosimilar sometimes to a naive patient, and they want to be in charge of not switching somebody who's a stable patient to something they haven't taken before. Another question, how comfortable are you with switching your patient to a biosimilar for non-medical reasons, meaning cost? And how comfortable are you with a third party switching your patient to a biosimilar, again, for cost, a government or an insurer here in the US? 58%, more than half, were uncomfortable with switching their patients to a biosimilar for non-medical reasons. Now, this percentage increases all the way to 73% when asked about a third party initiating such a switch. Another question, from your perspective, how important is it for government tenders for biosimilars to be awarded to multiple suppliers, not just one? Most respondents, 63%, felt it was very important or critical for tenders to be awarded to multiple suppliers. And that, of course, gets into supply chain issues, because what happens if that one supplier, we know now with COVID, supply has become a very important issue. What happens if that one supplier you picked can't deliver? And I asked a regulator that in your region, and the regulator said, oh, there's things built into the law that they could be penalized and punished, but great. What about all the patients that need access to that drug? They can't get access to it. So that could be a big problem, and multiple tenders would seem to solve that to some extent. So from your perspective, how important is it for factors besides price to be taken into account for national tenders offers, such as reliability of the supply chains, the patient support services that may come along with ordering from a certain company, or a manufacturer's reputation? How, a biologics manufacturer that's been in the business for 30, 40 years versus one that's in their first year, you may have some trepidation of using the latter one. So we asked, how important is it for factors besides price to be taken into consideration? You could see that a total of 70, 80% there thought it was critical or very important for national tenders to consider factors just besides price. So what are the conclusions of this survey? Our survey reveals that European physicians have increased their familiarity with biosimilars since they were last surveyed 6 years ago, 7 years ago now, but this survey was 2019, and that's really good news. We know that the EMA and many physicians organizations in Europe have taken the important step of educating physicians about biologics and biosimilars. And that's obviously worked when we see that the number of physicians, the knowledge of physicians about biosimilars, their familiarity with them has increased significantly in the last 7 years. We've seen that physicians are highly comfortable with biosimilars, but they're less comfortable switching a stable patient to a biosimilar, a stable patient that's taking a reference biologic that's working for them. And they're more comfortable putting a patient who's naive on a biosimilar, and that's not surprising. And we learned from this survey that physicians are highly uncomfortable with a non-medical substitution performed by a third party. And that figure has increased sharply in the 6 years between the surveys. Last, they consider it highly important for governments to make multiple therapeutic choices available in tenders when you're in a country that uses tenders. And they believe that these tenders should take into account factors besides pricing, such as supply chain issues and reputations and ability to deliver and things of that nature. So that is a summary of what the survey showed. And we have a poster that has actually been presented in Europe when there used to be in-person presentations. And this poster is available. I could email it to you, or I could send you a paper copy. And you could also, if you get a copy of this presentation, use your phone to hit the QR code here. I'll move my face out of the way so you could get a good copy of the QR code there. And you will then be able to get the survey results right on your phone or whatever you use for that. And the last thing you can do is email me. And I have put my email address here on the bottom, andrew.spiegel, S-P-I-E-G-E-L, @globalcca.org, and I'd be happy to email you a copy of the survey, a copy of the abstract paper that we have, or any other information that you'd like. And of course, if you have any questions for me, I know we don't have a live question and answer session here, but if you have questions, certainly feel free to email me. I'll do my best to get back to you as promptly as possible. And once again, I want to thank the conference organizers for inviting me to speak at this conference. I wish I were there in person, but I hope the rest of you have a great day and enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.